Okay, so for week 6 classwork, we're going to, first you're going to do is watch this video that you're watching right now, right? And then in here you can see that I've laid out what you're going to need to do. So I'm going to go over this, and then what I want you to know is that there's a write-up here, and really this video. Now this video is from a previous semester, and I'm sure you've seen that in my class, as there's times I reuse videos, mostly just because they really worked well, and sometimes it's because they're just a challenge to record. And this is one of those. Because what I'm going to have you do this time is first, set up class topics. So, do a few notes that talks about that, yes, there's stuff from a previous semester, and it's always important to read the written information of what you need to create. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do is actually take off some of this below, because I've bullet pointed here the things you need to do. Okay? So just know that that's the case. And before I jump in, I just want to, for a second, and this will go in your class topics, make sure you've set up your whatever you've called it. I called it CIT15, SP19. Right, you're shared with everyone. If I go into shared, should be made shareable. You should see a green link there, right? That's all good. And this is where you would put things that would be shared with the hands-on. But this, of course, classwork is what you're sharing just with me. Now, if I go into that and check it, this for you will look different because you have shared this solely with me. Okay, now I'm not going to share a folder with myself, but what you should see listed there is my name. And by default, it's going to give me edit, and that's a really important thing, right? So this is a little bit of a review. More than anything, I want to make sure you've set up these directories correctly. Okay, so back over here. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you fill out a form that I have been using over the years for this class. And this is a link to the form, and I actually already have the form up. And I've changed it a little bit, and you'll see this when you watch the part of the video you need to glean some of the information I want you to have here, right? So I'm actually adding for you to put your name. In the previous semesters, I actually had you do a print screen of your submission. I'm actually going to have you do that, but I'm going to have you do it differently, and I'm going to show you how that's done. So, this is probably the most important and interesting question for me, because I can look at what students are using most, and I always see an option here. As a matter of fact, I see that for some reason when I was editing, I actually got one. So, by the way, and this is good to know too, you're not going to need to do this for my form, and you can't for my form. Oh, I can't do it yet. But you're going to end up creating your own form in a minute. Okay, and I show in the video how to glean all this information, and it's really important that you understand, at least conceptually, how to find some of this information. So if you don't know it off the top of your head, just know that as you're going through this, that's what this video will help you do. As a matter of fact, I think I would probably start around point at about 16, maybe before that, because I actually talk about ways to share remote computers and some other, I think, really good topics. But I think the meat of it starts here as I go through and I show you how to fill out that form. I show you how to take a print screen. And now one other thing I've actually dropped here is in the video, if you hear me talking about Task Manager and Activity Manager on the Mac, I actually have dropped the requirements for you to do those things, but I still think it's good that you know how. And so I primarily use a Mac, and so my version of this is called Activity Manager. On Windows, it's called the Task Manager, and if you've ever been in there, it's probably because something stopped working, at least on Windows, and you had to actually end it, right? But there's other really great information, and again, I want you to, in this video, walk through and just, as a matter of fact, I can see it right here. This is the point at which I start talking about, because I can see it on the screen, the Task Manager on Windows, and just understanding what it is and where to find it, right? So I think what I'd like you to do in this class topic is also, and you can come back and do this as you move into the work, is come back and tell me, right? Did you use and did you know how to pull up Activity Manager? Did you know how to pull up Task Manager? Did you look around and see some of the things that I talked about? Again, I'm not going to make you output anything here, but I think it's helpful for you to do that. Okay, so let me kind of settle back and go back to where I was. So you're going to fill out my form. And in filling out my form, you have to watch the other video in detail for how to get some of this information, right? And so here's what I did I went through before I started the video and I filled out for my particular setup. And you'll hear me talk about your hard drives, or in this case you might have solid state drives, and the importance of keeping them under 50% of total capacity. So just know that that's an important thing, is to understand how much of your hard drive is currently being used. And then on your internet speed, this is one I'm actually going to have you take an additional print screen for, right? So I did mine today as well, just to see, and it was pretty fast. 99.8 megabits per second. And so we'll be talking about some of these terms through the semester, so it's just good to know what it is. And then you can see in here mine was greater. So also I have noticed over the semesters I've had to increase these ranges because the internet speed has become faster as well. And then I ask you browser and other things, right? So you can just, again, when you're filling out the form, this is where you want to reference about in here for how to glean that information, because in the video I show both Windows and Mac. I don't show it for Chrome OS, right? So you probably want to go find some other computer to do this. It shouldn't take that long to glean it, or do a little research about how to find that. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things I did, is I actually, once I found out and I knew I had an i7, one of my questions was how many cores do I have? So even though it says i7, right, it's only got 4 cores. And although if I didn't have an Extreme, so I had to make sure what processor I had. And these are just great things to know how to do, okay? Okay, so hopefully I've given you what you need, which is you got to fill out this form. In order to fill out this form, you have to watch enough of the video to answer some of these questions, okay? So now here's the key, is when you hit submit, this is where you're going to grab your first print screen, right? So when I hit submit, and then it submits it, now you're not doing it yet, see previous submissions. Now I'm the only one right now that's submitted, right? So, but what I'm going to have you do, because this is going to change over time, this obviously the people who submitted and what OS they have, right? And this is actually what I think is probably the most interesting one. So you're going to take a print screen here, right? And you can just take a print screen, boom, right there. Right? And mine actually is on the Mac, and it comes up on my desktop, no big deal. Now that is one you're going to have to copy, right? And I showed you last week how to do, or week before, how to do this one of two ways, right? So in this case, this is where my submission could go. So I could either just grab it from my Finder, or I could link it, right? But I have to get it up to that drive first, right? So I would go into the shared with Rio, and this is why you start seeing several things in here, right? Now I like to, again, I'm going to do it the little longer way, but I actually prefer just to drag it up in there when I can. And I'm just going to do file upload, right? And then if I was actually putting this as and actually I could do it right here. Let me just do it right here. I could actually just do this. I could right click and rename, and I could call it form submission. Right, and it is in this case, very good. You know what I forgot to do here is actually make sure I remain or keep the file extension, and this is .png. Now for Windows it's a little different. So I'm going to just go ahead and open that file, and that uploads it into here, okay? So that was one way I showed you last week. You could do that, no problem, and then it gets in there. And then I showed you last week, you could either drag it into here if you wanted, right? You could insert an image, right? And you could do it from your own drive. It's another way to do it. That's kind of a fun way, because you can just go in and you can look at my drive, and then I could look at this directory here, And then I could look at the shared with Rio, it's already mine. And look at that, form submission. So I could just put it in and then it does it. But again, the easier way to do this is actually just to open up your Explorer window. And then for me, I already see it there and I could drag it. Okay, so I just wanted a little bit of a review there just to make sure you know how. And again, you could create a direct link. That's the other way you could do that, is you could create a link to the file. But the key is making sure you've put that in the right subdirectory. Okay? All right, let's go back here. So now that's the first thing, fill out my form. And now what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to actually have you create your own form. And again, the video talks about this, so I'm going to let you watch that point. You can actually see as I was going through here, where I actually have you start right about there, or at about 29, is where I show you how to create your own form, which by the way is a great thing to know how to do. And the key is you're only going to need 5 questions. Now, in this case, when you create your own form, right, you don't have to worry about putting this in the shared with Rio, although you totally can, right? But when you create a new form, right, blank form, then all you have to provide to me is the link. Now in this case, right, you're just setting up the form, and again, you just fill this out. You have to have 5 questions, and then when you're ready, you can just hit preview, right, and then you can just copy that. Now, you'll hear me say this a little bit. What I want from here on out, oh, I forgot that one, but that's okay. We can talk about that one in a minute, is in this case, I could either just put another text, or I could just click this, and I want you to do what's called clean links. Like this is not a clean link, right? It's just because it's the full URL, it's long, it's hard to, we don't read it anyway. Well, okay, unless you're looking for file versus folder. But in this case, if I apply that, then I can see that is there, okay? Now, that's what you'll need to do here for the internet speed. It's another form, print screen that you can just fill out, right? So let me just go back here, right? So I've talked about the print screen you need to take. I didn't do it in this one, but right, include it here. You're going to create your own form. You're going to fill out my form, and you've taken a few notes here on Classwork, right? I reviewed Google Docs setup. I talked about how sometimes you see old videos, so make sure you're in that. I want to make sure that you've looked at your activity manager or your task manager, depending on what OS you're in, right? And again, this video is really for reference to help you work through that the stuff you need for both filling out my form and for creating your own. Okay, so hopefully that, and by the way, this is one of those assignments that I call really important. Okay, maybe I've said that before, but still, it is because you really, the more you know about your computer and your internet speed, and you've learned some new software for creating forms, so it's actually multi-layered in that case. And again, we're continuing to teach you how to do these print screens, but also find it interesting to see what we use differently as terms of OSs, right? Because I could show you, and maybe what I'll do is do that this week in attendance, to show you in the previous semester what was the OS graph, what was the what percentage breakdown was that in there. All right, have a great one. Make sure you reach out if you need any help, and then I'll talk to you soon. Bye.